these lines illustrate the fearlessness and the confidence of our freedom fighters. And also, while reading the book, I felt the author's fearless pursuit towards uncovering the mystery of the hedge was very relatable to these lines that Subramanya Bharati had wrote. With that, I think we can start deliberating on the book, The Hedge. Um, Personally, when I read the book, it took me back to those. I started reliving the memories of my history classes where we initially learnt about colonialization and British rule and all that. So I was reminded much about the Dandi March and the Vedaranyam Salt March and all of that. So, what were your views on the book?
So, while reading this, it made me wonder, like, how many more stories are hidden in our history? Like, how many more is lost or like faded away? Because, I mean, if it weren't for Roy, I don't know if anyone would have even thought that such a thing existed. Like, even when he was looking for it and on the hunt of finding the remnants, uh, even when he met like people living in that place and older people and things like that, there was absolutely no trace, and it took a lot of time and probably like a lot of research, after which he finally came to a certain result. But there must be so much more than that. I'm sure that there's like so much more interesting facts about our history and facts that things that happened in the past. So it made me wonder, like, how much has time, taken away, or yeah, it is just thought provoking. And also, it's also like crazy of how they thought of like a physical barrier to divide these princely states and the Britain rule. Crazy. I mean, I don't know if people would come up with such an idea in today's time. Like, if there's conflict or if there's disagreement for certain issues, I don't know if this would be like the first thing they come up with, or it's quite fascinating to think of what they came up with.
Yeah. As you said, on uncovering, the mystery of the hedge, and him when the book reads of him going to different places and verifying maps and all of that, that still leaves me wonderstruck of how many more such mysteries are still left to be uncovered. So that also sort of made me question as to how much of historic facts or historic events are really documented and lost. I mean, most of those most of the events in history, are they, where are they kept, and how are they documented? How are they later uh, preserved? It led me to think on those lines too.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I was thinking when reading the book was, what perspective is there in Britain? Like, at what perspective did they write? Like, all we heard about in our history, that how we struggled, and I think they'll have a justificate. I'm not justifying them. I'm just saying how they might have written it. You know,
Mm.
like they made us do have a salt tax, so they have to have a justificatory version. I'm wondering how could they even justify all this?
Wow, interesting. When it comes to salt, tax, and money, there is an interesting fact that I fumbled upon. Actually, the word salary, that actually meant, salt money. That is it's originating from a word called salarium, and salarium literally means salt money. So in the earlier days, salt was used in the barter system. So this was an interesting fact that I stumbled upon, how salt and salary is connected. So, yeah. So anyone has any anecdotes that they have to share from the colonial regime or in relation with the salt taxes?
Um, to Akshita's point, it's super interesting to think of the aspect she was mentioning, actually, as to if there is a story or if there's a reasoning behind what they did and what their how to say perspective on this whole scenario was. But I'm wondering if there was any at all, because I mean, the minute you decide to conquer a place and rule over the place and call it yours, already there, I don't think you're actually thinking of the humanity aspect and like humane qualities, as to like give respect to the ones you're conquering, or to keep in consideration of how they would feel or anything like that. So I'm not sure, but like, of course, if you talk about it today, people probably do feel bad that stuff like this might have happened. But back then, I'm not sure if they really cared about how they ruled, because the minute they decided to like rule itself, there is like a hierarchy. There's the sense of someone superior and the other being inferior and working for them. So yeah, just some thoughts out there. I'm wondering what the others think though, because I'm also very curious to know.
I mean, obviously, they didn't have a motive behind it. I mean, they didn't care much for us. But see, I I just want to know like how we were taught in our textbooks back in childhood, like all the history. It's very I don't know, I cannot get the word to use it, but what would they teach their children? How is their history? How so we went to a different country, we invaded them, we got them trains, we got them this. Is that how they're going to write about it? But is it how it's written?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wonder as well. Yeah, I wonder.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So, adding to the point, there's another one thing which I would like to say regarding, let's say, any of the cities which has been documented by the Britishers, for example. Like we actually have some good data till the time they ruled, but afterwards, if you ask, like, if we have the data right now, I'm not so quite sure because even though they did, we had lots of negative cons on it, but I can see like there's some pros too because. If you see the map of Madras or map of Bombay, you can still find it in their libraries, and also we also have the records of it. Very few though, but after that, I'm not quite sure how updated we have been, right? So I would like to know what you guys think about it.
So I think from the invention of the GPS, mapping must have improved quite a lot. So anyone else on their ideas?
Does anyone else know of unknown tales or like lesser known facts or events like these that might have happened before? I'm just wondering if yeah, if any of you knew such things. Or even like the other side of a story that is usually narrated in a certain way or from a certain perspective.
So, there was a lot about you know hi- folk and history being related, and so I felt that there was a lot of historic wisdom that is hidden in folk tales, and stories and poetry, literature that has been come up. And I think, I mean, from my point of view, I think literature, poetry, and folklore preserves history better than documentation. So, any views, ideas on that?
Hello,
Hello.
am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so on that, I had to say something. So, actually, that is possibly true because history is written by a particular person who might have an intention to portray things in a certain way. But, I mean, the same can be said about folklore. But then, if you look at history, folklore, everything holistically, maybe you get the real picture. Because everything is written from someone's perspective. Much of history is distorted because of the historians, who they wrote for. Suppose they wrote for the British, then it's written in a certain way. So that is another thing that a lot of what we read is probably manipulated to make us think in a certain way. So the more the sources, the better. Yeah, that's what I had to say.
I think that's completely true. Like all the kings or something before British ruled us, all the kings. I think everybody wrote to impress the king. Whatever they wrote about his rule. I don't think we have the actual facts if we look at the main, history that is left.
So, taking this point into view that there are different, yeah, there are different perspectives to looking at things. Um, do you think that the hedge would have been intentionally covered up at some point of time? Maybe because it was later abandoned and did not prove to be a very effective way of administration. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chair.
Yeah.
Um, mm,
You're not audible. The volume is very low.
yeah, I'm not talking.
Sorry.
So when doing the particular, I don't remember the ruler or the area. There's a particular dam that was built during. I'm talking about 1,000 years ago, maybe by the kings. So there's a particular community which digs up the dam for storage of a check dam that digs up, and the king and the community do that work together. So the idea is before the opening of the dam, they say that next day morning the dam is going to be inaugurated. It does is they vacate that land completely, and then they move into the next phase to start digging the next land. It seems so their identity is completely not there as a person as who actually did the work, and why was it done. This came about because you're talking about the identity of the hedge as to why would the hedge be there. There could be various reasons as to why it have been. Mm. And in relation to your previous question, in addition to what Janani and Akshita were sharing, it's called historiography. Historiography is the study uh, of of writing histories, of why histories are written in a certain ways. It's called historiography. So in historiography, there are usually in any creation there are three things. One is the creator, the other is the creation in itself, and third is the perceiver. So in history, it's a triangle. So in history, it's usually the author, the subject, and the reader. That's the triangle of history usually. So in this, there are variations amongst it as to that's why you have these difference in perspectives and difference in opinions, because each person takes a different stand in the triangle. For some, the reader takes a very different stand, saying this is how it is, because it is not the hedge is very different as I read it, and the hedge is different as any of the people participants here read it. For each person, it's a very different thing. How you visualize it, because it's a written narrative saying this is how the hedge was. Nobody really knows how it was. You assume what we know from the memory of it. So this could have been the hedge. And it could also be uh, from the author side in describing the hedge as to how it is. Um, the, and it also depends on the time period is what I'm thinking. Like, the time period in which the book was written. There's a very wide gap between when the hedge was formed and when he is actually going in search of it. If you have to go back in history and if Roy had to actually write a book along with the formation of the hedge, then I think the book would have been very, very different then. The book wouldn't have the same essence as it has for today. And other one is the creation itself. The third point is the creation of the hedge in itself. Well, can the hedge mean different things at different periods of time? Can the hedge mean different things to different people? But somebody who is already there with the hedge always, it means really nothing to them, because it's just another fence that is there guarding something. But for somebody who is searching like him, then it means a whole deal of values and meaning that he has kind of installed, or who sees so much in it. I think depending upon that, I think there's a lot of variation, and I think it's one of the very rarest historical books where there is somebody who has gone in search of something that he believed that he could be able to find it. If you read the entire volume of the book, there are very minute details that he attributes, very minute details that he records in the book. Even where where the chai tapri was, where did he go and what did he actually see from there? How long did he have to walk to do that? Where did he stay? All those details also come into. I think if any one of us have to go back in search of the edge again, excuse 1 minute. Sorry. If you have to go back in search of the hedge again, then I think it will give us a very different picture. I wonder what we will find right now and what we will write searching for it. What will our account of the hedge be right now? You may not even find those reminiscence or the remains that is still there. What he was able to find for a very short part of it, I don't think we'll be able to find it because it would have been long gone. And the landscape that he is describing in the later part of the book as to how the landscape was, and it could be very, very different right now. It could be cities, or it could be a complete urban sprawl with a lot of buildings going around, and you won't even have a trace of where he went. Though he has given a very detailed map as to where all he has traveled, but if someone can contact him and get the map in the zoomed in scale, more like a trial path where we can walk back, I think it's more fun. Like there are a lot of people who do the Dandi Yatra every year, even though it happened I think about 100 years ago. There are a lot of people who take the march every year, even till date on the same date, and they walk the same distance that Gandhi covered, meet the same places, meet the same people. It's very interesting to do that, but I wonder if we'll be able to do it for the hedge, because hedge may or may not be there. Maybe I think someone will try it, or someone from here we'll get inspired by the book and try walking the hedge again, I guess. Yeah, thanks. That's all I wanted to share. Yeah.
That's very interesting. We don't know the volume of stories that are hidden under, as Kaushik sir said, like lot of stories could have gone under the urban sprawl. Now that landscapes are changing by the day, so I think that was also a mention in the book, like how the hedge was also, helpful for us to actually lay roads later, though it kind of completely covered the existence of the hedge. Later, the landscape had changed and it had gotten better infrastructure. So, what are your views on that?
I just have a question. I don't have a question that you asked. Um, um, there are actually two questions. One is, have any of you who is here in this discussion tried retracing something of your past to find your ancestral roots, or to find the history of some object that you have in your place for many generations? That's one. And the other is, have any of you come across similar, I don't know if you call it expedition, but similar search for something in history? Because I haven't come across what I can remember. Have any of you come across similar things? Is what I wanted to ask and understand.
I wouldn't know if it's exactly similar or in such a great search. I don't think so, but I think recently during the times of water shortage and all of that, I think and the floods, we were doing a little bit of research, tracing the water maps as to how it was before and how was it in the colonial times with the canal bank, which is now the Mount Road and all that. So we were in one of our studies, we were retracing the water maps of Madras, especially. So yeah, that was quite interesting. We found a lot more lakes that dotted than what we find today. And there was also, I think, an article on the newspaper that talked about how these lakes have now reduced or even died, and how Madras's, Chennai's landscape is actually that of interconnected tanks and ponds, and the importance of Porambok land and all of that. So that was another interesting, at least from in my study, it was a discovery for me.
Interesting.
I have a funnier thing to share actually. Something that may not exactly be relevant, maybe, but so to the first question of retracing back our lives to find about an object or something, I have, but in a more intangible manner. I was trying to retrace memories and things like that. Like for example, I like, how to say, call people, let it be like family members or friends, with certain nicknames from my childhood, and I realized why until a certain point of time. So I was like, suddenly out of the blue, someday I used to ask my parents, like, why am I calling that person that? And then they were like, oh, because of this and that. Like, example is, my dad's friend used to call him Music Tata. And I was wondering, like, why am I calling him Music Tata? Like, is he related to like some is he a musician or what? And suddenly I asked my parents, and then they were like, no, no, it's just that he used to have a big mustache when like he always used to have a big mustache, and because of that we used to say Misa Tata to you, but then you interpreted it and like thought that it was music, and you just kept calling him that like ever since. So this kind of funny stuff I used to retrace back. Other things, the second question about retracing, this reminded me of when we used to go to like South India, North India trips. So during my South India trip, we went to Hampi, and there, we were assigned to also like make a short film and something interesting and all of that. So when we were thinking of the Vijayanagara Empire and how life must have been back then, and wherever we go, people say stories like this used to be that music plays and it has pillars that make like sound of each swara and things like that. So we were like reimagining that entire space back then, and then we used to play this game to ourselves, like thinking that okay, those kings and people back then must have hidden their like treasures somewhere, so let's go on a hunt and find out where these things are. So we used to like go alone in teams and then literally just play a game as if we're like finding some treasure and like podel tedramari and whatnot. So I mean, of course we didn't find anything, but to our surprise, we did find a lot of like engravings, shivalingas, and things like that on the rocks, like not in the usual path that's taken, but rather like a little away from where the rest of my classmates were. But yeah, so that was something fun we used to do. I don't know if it made sense to the question asked, but just a thought that I wanted to share.
I think it makes absolute sense. Ways to actually to go back to a place in time, and then to reenact it. I hope it's a lot of fun. Uh, to all the cities that you all belong to, wherever you are from. I think if you have to go back in time with the same context that we have and act like persons from the past, I think it will be very fun. I think if Roy, um, I think in some way what Roy did was that he was actually a person from the present time, and then he actually went back in history to actually to trace it. Uh, I think that's where the fun lies in. I don't think it could have been so much fun to trace something that's already there, very 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 readily available out there to you. Saying, "Hey, I'm here. Come document me." I think that's not fun. I think the fun part is to go in search of something that you don't know what you're searching for. I think that search by itself is the most beautiful thing, is what I'm guessing.
ஆக்சுவலி நான் ஒன்று ஷேர் பண்ணணும்னு நினைக்கிறேன். நான் கொஞ்சம் லேட்டாக தான் இன்னைக்கு செஷன் ஜாயின் பண்ணேன். சௌந்தர்யா சார் பேசினதை வச்சு ஐம் ஜஸ்ட் அசியூமிங் த கொஸ்டின் ஆர் அசியூமிங் த டாபிக் ரைட் நவ. I think ஒரு couple of months back, Saundarya might remember that we went to Mandu, மத்திய பிரதேஷ்ல இருக்கு. ஸோ அங்க எப்படின்னா நிறைய ஃபோர்ட்ஸ் எல்லாமே வந்து பாலடைஞ்சு போயிருக்கும். So there was one place which we went early morning, 6 or 7 o'clock anga poitom. பார்த்தா அந்த இடம் செம்மையா லைக் ஃபுல்லா நேச்சரே வந்து டேக் ஓவர் பண்ணிருச்சு அந்த இடத்த. பட் வைல் வி வர் வாக்கிங் அக்ராஸ் த காரிடார் அண்ட் எனிதிங், இங்க தானே ராணி நடந்து போனாங்க, ஏன் நம்மளும் நடந்து போறோம் அந்த இடத்துல, இங்க தாண்டி அங்க எல்லாம் இந்த லேடி கதை பேசி இருப்பாங்க. ஐ திங்க் வி கிரியேட்டட் லைக் அ ஸ்டோரி போர்ட் தேர். லைக் எல்லாரும் உட்காந்துட்டு எங்கெல்லாம் என்னென்ன பண்ணிருப்பாங்க, வி அசியூம்ட் ஓகே இது ராஜா வாழ்ந்த இடம் இருக்கும், இது ராணி வாழ்ந்த இடமா இருக்கும். அண்ட் இங்கதான் வந்து they would have like ஃபுட் ஏதாவது சாப்பிட்டுருப்பாங்க. இங்கதான் we always wondered where is the washroom, ஏன்னா எங்க போனாலுமே வெறும் ஓப்பனாவே இருக்குமே, இங்க எங்க வாஷ்ரூம் இருக்கு அப்படிலாம் நிறைய யோசிச்சுட்டு இருந்தோம். So I think it just reminded me of that, like the things that we did. So thank you, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I remember. I mean, exactly. Like again, a fun memory. It was super cool imagining ourselves in those places and back in time and things like that. Yeah, I think everyone should do that. It's so much fun. Back to childhood, kindergarten days, when anything could be any place. We make our own palaces and castles and everything. Yeah.
எனக்கும் அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு சிமிலர் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் இருந்துச்சு. பத்மநாபபுரம் பேலஸ் போனோம். அப்போ வந்து ஃபர்ஸ்ட் அந்த பேலஸ் வெளில இருந்து பார்க்கும்போது ரொம்ப குட்டியா இருக்கும். ஓகே, அது ரொம்ப ஒன்னெல்லாம் உள்ள இருக்காது அப்படின்னு நினைச்சிட்டு போனோம். ஆனா போக போக தனியா லேடிஸ்க்கு தனியா, ராஜாக்கு ராணிக்கு அந்த மாதிரி ரொம்ப தனித்தனியா இருக்கும் போதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப இமேஜினேஷன் வந்துருச்சு. ஓகே, இங்க இப்படி நடந்திருப்பாங்க, இங்கதான் இருந்தாங்க. அவங்க வந்து பீப்புளை பாக்கிறதுக்காக தனியா ஜாலி ஒர்க்ஸ் போட்டு ஒரு விண்டோஸ் மாதிரிலாம் இருந்துச்சு, அங்கதான் லேடிஸ் பார்ப்பாங்க அப்படின்லாம் சொல்லிட்டு. அப்புறம் டான்சிங் ஒரு ஹால், டான்சிங் ஹால் மாதிரி இருந்துச்சு. அங்க வந்து ராஜா மட்டும்தான் அங்க உட்காந்து பார்க்க முடியும் அப்படின்ட்டு நாங்க ஃபர்ஸ்டே ஒரு இடத்த கிராஸ் பண்ணோம். அந்த இடத்துல எப்படின்னா கீழே ஜாலி இருந்தது. ஓகே, இது கீழே ஏதோ ஜாலி வச்சிருக்காங்க நினைச்சு கிராஸ் பண்ணிட்டு வந்துட்டோம். ஆனா அப்புறம் அந்த டேம்ல பார்க்கும்போது அந்த ஜாலி தெரிஞ்சது. அது என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னா அங்க லேடிஸ் உட்காந்து பார்ப்பாங்க அப்படின்ட்டு. ரொம்ப அந்த கார்விங்ஸ் எல்லாமே ரொம்ப கிட்ட இருந்தது. அது என்ஜாயபிளா இருந்துச்சு.
So, where our experience was that nearby my hometown, there was this archaeological site. So they were excavating and they found this huge mud earth urns, and adukulla vantu they had like lots of coins, and I think they also found a lot of jewelry back then with like these beautiful beads, and it was beautiful. A lot of swords, a lot of how to say kitchen sort of cutlery, interesting stuff. So on the place until they had excavated, and as kids we went like on a school site. So anga porappo even that was also very interesting, because it felt as if like when the person who was excavating it, he was also an architect, Popo Pingal and sollte. So he was explaining both in terms of history and in terms of how they might have like buried it according to hierarchy and things like that. So it was very interesting. Like it felt almost as if when you saw those things in person and when you heard the stories at the same time, felt as if you were back in time, like literally like imagining that space and imagining that time, life and all of that. So even that was something very interesting. Even though I personally didn't have anything to do with the tracing, still it was very interesting.
This is a funny experience with my dad. நாங்க சும்மா எங்கேயா வெளில போனோம், எங்கேயாவது ஹில் ஸ்டேஷன் அந்த மாதிரி எங்கேயாவது போனோம்னா சும்மா ஏதாவது கீழே கிடக்கும், கல்லு அந்த மாதிரி ஏதாவது பழசா பழசா இருக்கும். ஆனா அதை பார்த்தோன்னே அதை வச்சு நாங்களே ஒரு ஸ்டோரி பண்ணுவோம். அந்த காலத்துல இது ட்ரேட் ரூட்டா இருந்தது, வந்து ராஜா இருந்தாங்க அப்படின்ட்டு. அந்த மாதிரி சின்ன சின்ன ஏதாவது ஒரு பார்க்கும்போது அது கொஞ்சம் பழசா இருக்கு அப்படின்னா, இல்ல வந்து ஏதாவது ஒரு காயின், பழைய காயின் கிடைச்சதுன்னா இது இந்த ராஜாவோட காயின் அப்படின்ட்டு அந்த மாதிரி கொஞ்சம் ஃபன்னி எக்ஸ்பீரியன்ஸ் எல்லாம் நிறைய இருக்கு அந்த மாதிரி ட்ரேஸ் பண்ணது.
Super. Sounds like fun. So nice. Like நிறைய பேர் இப்படி பண்றதுன்னு தெரிஞ்சது கொஞ்சம் ஓகே, we're not the only people அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி தோணுது. maybe we should all go in search of the Great Hedge also. Look deeper into the findings of Roy. அப்புறம் அந்த ஃபுல் புக்கை படிச்சுட்டு நம்மலாம் I think we can go if there is any remnants, or else we can make up our stories also, I guess.
That would be more fun.
Yeah.
I think in the Madri tracing we did during our rurals also. So rurals appo we visited one hamlet that was up a hill. So appo vandu there were a lot of things that we actually heard from the people, and then we kind of verified with the government officials and all, and there were a lot of things that we really found. So they were different, like there the houses, they were initially made out of stone and all that, and then later on they switched over to wattle and daub, and they kept extending the houses like that. So initially பார்க்க போகும்போது என்ன இது மெட்டீரியல்லாம் ஒரு ரூமுக்கு ஒரு மெட்டீரியல் மாதிரி டிஃப்ரெண்டா இருக்கே, how come they built something like that? We were all really curious as to how they just happened to do that. But then we found out that apdi kadayad. Firstly, in the initial days they used to have people who know how to do that stone craft. Adukaprom again it was because of this British rule they were kind of a lot of this forest act la vandu they were affected a lot, and adanal they had to change their ways of building, and adukaprom how they shifted to wattle and daub, cob, and the madri how they shifted adala. It was really nice. Even we found out that hamlet actually got created because they had escaped from the British rule from Madurai and nearby places, and apdiye they had come over to these mountains to take refuge madri. It was really nice. அதே மாதிரி அங்க ஒரு டேம் இருந்தது. அந்த டேம் வந்து how that dam came and how it was connected to the the spring. அந்த மலையில நிறைய ஸ்ப்ரிங் இருந்தது. ஸோ அந்த மலையில இருக்கிற ஸ்ப்ரிங் எல்லாம் வந்து ஆக்சுவலி எப்படி வந்து கீழே இருக்கிற டவுனோட ரிவரை வந்து எப்படி ஃபீட் பண்ணிட்டு, and how the dam actually came up about because of industrialization and a lot of things. And finally the river now is so badly affected because the dam now holds the water and it gives a direct connection to a lot of resorts and things like that. And the river is now having very little water, and it once a river that was perennial is now become seasonal. So in the madrila tracing out we found during our rural study. So in regard to tracing, really nice. Or a small hamlet, it consisted of only about 162 houses or something. So avlo small hamlets, which is really on top of a mountain, very insignificant. Actually we found it, நாங்க அதை கண்டுபிடிச்சதே சும்மா எதேச்சியா கண்டுபிடிச்ச மாதிரி தான்ன்ற மாதிரி இருக்கிற அந்த ஒரு இடத்துக்கு இவ்வளோ ஒரு இம்பாக்ட் அப் டில் த டவுன்ஸ் அதோட இம்பாக்ட் வருங்கிறதெல்லாம் வந்து was really I was really awestruck by the end of the study where we made a sum up and where we said that these were the inferences that we got. Even we ourselves were really astounded at what we had found. So I think, yeah, tracing must be really, really fun. Read. Any other interesting incidents that people would like to share?
So yeah, now actually I think 1 year back we did one competition ANDC சொல்லிட்டு அதுல வந்து we had to find a liminal space. Like நம்ம யூசுவலா டிராவல் பண்ற ஒரு இடம், பட் நம்ம அதை ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண மாட்டோம். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி வி ஃபவுண்ட் திஸ் ஆர்ச் கம்மன் தர்வாஜான்னு சொல்லிட்டு இங்க ட்ரிப்ளிகேன்ல இருக்கு. ஏதோ லைக் என்ன சொல்றது, 2 பில்டிங்க்கு நடுல ஒரு குட்டியா இருக்கும், அந்த ரொம்ப குட்டியா இருக்கும். பட் ஆனா அந்த அந்த ஆர்ச் மட்டும் லைக் பெருசா, லைக் எப்படி சொல்றது, நீங்க பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஆட் ஒன் மாதிரி இருக்கும் அங்க. ஸோ நாங்க என்ன பண்ணோம், ஓகே ஃபைன், எல்லாருமே இந்த இடத்துல போயிட்டு வராங்க, இந்த என்ன கதை இருக்கு அப்படின்னு. ஐ திங்க் the journey that we went through finding what the story behind the arch was itself a trail for us. ஏன்னா every person that we were able to meet, or every connections that we made, or every stories that we heard, எல்லாமே எப்படி இருந்துச்சுன்னா, end of the day we found that it was a part of the palace. அதுதான் மெயின் கேட்டா இருந்திருக்கு. ஸோ அங்க ட்ரிப்ளிகேன்ல ஒரு பெரிய பேலஸ் ஒன்று இருந்து, அதுல இந்த என்டையர் பேலஸே இப்போ கிடையாது. they have taken out all the palace, just the arch alone is there, the main gate alone is there. So that was something very interesting that happened like a year back. And அதை கண்டுபிடிக்கும் போது இருந்த ஒரு ஆல் எக்ஸ்பீரியன்சஸ், ஆல் லைக் ஒரு ராஜா ராணி அந்த சண்டை போட்டுக்கிட்டாங்க, அவங்களோட காஃபினை மூவ் பண்ண விடலாம் அந்த கேட் வழியா. தட் ஸ்மால் கேட், அந்த ஒரு சின்ன இது இட் had so many stories to say. So likewise, I think there's so many places in Chennai or in Madras itself that we can discover. And yeah, I just wanted to share. Thank you.
I think every built form, whether small or big, has its own story, because you know, anything created has its own purpose. So once we think about rediscovering the reasons behind that, I think every built form will have its own very nice mysterious stories to say.
Definitely, yeah.
Wonderful. So, anyone else would like to share anything?
So, another funny memory, but this time it actually has something to do with physically tracing as well. Um, so, um, I was doing my internship in Ahmedabad for some time, and at that time, I think some of the buildings that are usually not accessible were open for a week's time. So with that particular time slot, you could go and visit with a guided tour and things like that. This was organized by students. So I went along with three of my friends, and we had gone to Premabai Hall, which is built by Doshi sir in Old City. And after going to that building, like we were also talking amongst ourselves, saying that, somewhere in Old City, apparently Doshi sir's first office was here, and it was somewhere nearby. And then when we were on the top floor and we came out, the guide like told me, I don't know, out of the blue he came, and then he was like, do you know that that's like somewhere there on that corner is where Doshi sir's office was. And we were like, oh my goodness, we have to go see it. Who knows, there might be some like artifacts left, or some drawing, or something like that. So we sneaked and then we went out. So it was under renovation at that time. So we went inside, and there were people working, and it was almost like, how to say, crumpling situation, but we still went. And the people there thought that we were part of, I mean, when we were saying that we're architects, students, and things like that, we don't exactly know what they understood. But there's also this Russian boy with us, so they were like, oh, okay, I guess they're from like the owner's side or something like that. And they took us all around, and we managed to see the entire place. But by then they also called the actual owner, and they're like, yeah, your folks are here, we're just showing them around. He came, and then he got so mad at us. They're like, you can't even come here. This is a private, project and whatnot. There's no one like that, and there was never any person like what you're saying, even though we knew that this was the place and whatnot. But apparently people aren't allowed to go there anymore. But yeah, that was fun, like just looking around and finding that spot where they worked before.
Interesting. So, are there any more anecdotes that anyone would like to share? Okay. I think that the session was really nice today. We got to relive a lot of memories and, exchange them within ourselves. A lot of interesting stories and facts. So it was a wonderful discussion for me, and thank you for this opportunity to mediate this session. And yeah, I enjoyed this session. Hope you all did too. Thank you.
Yeah, we did.
Do write about the session on social media, and yeah, happy reading.